Shastri to Srila Prabhupada in Mayapur. Srila Prabhupada liked them very much. And they're very sweet prayers, actually. Krishna Kacheta Madamo Havana Shakarin Madristi Gochara Prabhu Prabhupada Swamin Dosha Babriti Paradushita Manda Buddhi Sanchintayami Charano Tava Bhakti Heto. My dear Prabhupada, your mind is always fixed on Krishna. My dear Prabhupada, kindly shower me with your mercy. My intelligence is full of faults, and my mind is crazy. Therefore, my dear Prabhupada, I surrender completely unto you. Vrindavane Ramanareti Pasida Bhumau Tadrapa Krishna Balarama Asapada Mule Yanam Param Parama Krishna Sudama Mityuktam Dantes Tudeva Prabhupada Namo Namaste. I offer my obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, who is preaching the glories of Krishna at the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram in the place known as Ramanreti, Vrindavan. This was Prabhupada's favorite one, the one I just read now. Namaste, Namaste, Kripa Purna Driste, Namaste, Namaste, Mahananda Date. Datre, Namamo, Namama, Punaraksha Raksha, Videhi Dayam, Pahibo, Daksha Daksha. I offer my obeisances to Prabhupada, who is a shower of mercy. I offer my obeisances to Prabhupada, who is a bestower of transcendental bliss. Kindly protect me again and again. Kindly bestow your kindness upon me. Bhakti Siddhanta Shishaya, Bhakti Vedanta Namane, Prasamnaya, Prashantaya, Tasmashi, Gurave Namaha. Dear Prabhupada, you're the dearmost disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta. Your name is Bhakti Vedanta, and you are always calm and peaceful. I offer my obeisances unto you, who are my eternal Guru. Akshano Valam Dvadisham Darshanam Hi. Tano Valam Dvadisha Gatta Sangaha. Jiva Valam Dvadisha Kirtanam Hi. Sadulabha Bhagatam Hi Loke. O pure devotee, the purpose of the eyes is to see you. The purpose of the touch is to touch your body. The purpose of the tongue is to glorify you. Because in this world it's very difficult to find a pure devotee like you. Shri Banga Bhumi Jana Bhushana Gora Lila Goranga Bhava Paisarana Matta Shila Radha Mukunda Parapadma Manovalasin Ananda Bhashi Prabhupada Namo Namaste. You are always absorbed in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Your mind is always absorbed on the lotus feet of Radha Mukunda. Your mind is always absorbed in spiritual bliss. I offer my obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. Namam Shnubhadaya Krishnamastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tamane Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Vacharni Navasesha Singhavani Bhastakya Deshatani Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Now, as requested tonight, this is a little different than usual, because usually we have readings about etiquette and different topics, sometimes Bhagavad Gita. So the format tonight is, what did we used to do as Hare Krishnas when we joined? This was many years ago. Myself, I joined in November of '71 in Boston. And actually, the day that I came there is the day I joined. And that wasn't planned that way, but that's the way it happened. But what I would do is I'll just follow in the order of what we would do in the temple. Instead of talking about myself, I'm going to talk about what we would do in the temple. So the first time I came, it was a Sunday feast. So in the Sunday feast, they would have, actually used to be a 10-course feast. And we would have 10 different items. 10. It could be halava, sabji, puris, then another type of sabji, and then you have pakoras, samosas, rasgullas, sweet. You'd have so many different types of wonderful things that were very nice, very wonderful to taste. So a 10-course feast. And when I came, the temple was so clean, it shocked me. The floor was pink. The walls were pink. And then the stairs were white going up. So in my mind, I'm going, oh, these are like Stairway to Heaven. you know, going on up, because it was so white. There was no dust, there was no dirt, and I was like so mesmerized. And so when I came into because they had the temple room upstairs, and when you came in the door, they had this gigantic picture of Narada Muni. It was about up to the top of that light there, and about 4 feet wide. So as soon as you come in, you see Narada Muni with his vina, and it just totally like mesmerizes you when you would walk in the door. And it was just unbelievable. So they would have lecture, and then afterwards they would have a regular lecture, which was nice. And then afterwards, and they would also have artik, which would be very, very intense. It'd be very passionate.
Which temple, Prabhuji?
Boston.
Boston.
It was the old Beacon Street Temple where the press used to be. Because when I came there, the press had just left, and they all went to New York to do the press. That was Satsvarup Maharaj, and then Jadharani, and then the only ones who were remaining were Petit Udarana, and everyone else who went. They all went to New York. So at this time, the temple was more empty than it used to be. And so on the Sunday feast, they would walk around with a Maha plate, and it would just so totally mesmerize me, because on the Maha plate, they would have all the different things that they were offered to the deity. And they just keep shoveling onto your plate whatever you wanted, you know. And that was just, that, as you say, different devotees are mesmerized by different items. So I was totally mesmerized by the prasadam. Because, you know, the halava, of course, there's always something that catches you, totally grabs you. And halava was the thing that grabbed me, unlike anything. And the sweet rice, too. You can't forget the kheer, because kheer was very wonderful. And this is one of the ways that Prabhupada said that we would attract people to Krishna consciousness. And they also had sweet balls, and Prabhupada would call them, what were they? ISKCON bullets, right. And then they would have raisins in them. They'd be made out of powdered milk. And then I used to eat so many of them, you know, the mucus was just coming out of my ears. Because it was just, you know, too many sweets, but I'd never tasted sweets like this before, so I was just gobbling them up every chance I got. And that night, of course, it was austere, because then I was helping doing some cleaning, and then by the time we were done, he would come in at his 9 o'clock, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. We would go to sleep around 9 o'clock, and then they'd get up at, you know, 3 in the morning, because then everybody would have to take showers. So at this time, it was a little, it was strange for me, because in the bathroom, they didn't have a door. I mean, when I say they didn't have a door, it's just like, of course, the men's have their own shower and bathroom, but when you sat down to relieve yourself, there was no door. So this was a culture shock to me. And then on top, they had a big rack with all the, I said, what are all these rags? They go, oh, that's called Brahmin underwear. You know, and I didn't know what that was. So then they teach you how to put it on, went around the waist and went in between the legs and tied up in the back, so you look like a sumo wrestler. And then also is that they had it where all the socks were all mixed together, different colors in one big vat. And so I was just looking, and they're all different colors of the rainbow, and I said, that was quite a shocker. And then the other big pile, all mixed together, not folded nicely, were all, I said, what are these? I said, they look like bed sheets. They go, oh no, those are called our dhotis. And I said, okay. And so then they showed me how to put it on. And then the next day, they shaved my head. So this was kind of a shocker too. So there was a heavy push to go on to convert people and get people to join. And if it didn't work out, then you left, and then they would encourage, and then you'd peel you back and like that. So just try to imagine you come in here and you get a culture shock. It's almost like if you got off on an airplane or a jet in India, and all of a sudden, as soon as you get off, all of a sudden they're dragging you to a temple and they're shaving your head the next day, and just like, you know, totally overwhelming you. And then the next day we went out on Sankirtan on top of all that. So that was very intense. So the first one to show me how to do the Swami step, because you don't see so many devotees doing it anymore, but we would do it very extreme. And I have to show you, because the thing is that you see pictures of it, but you don't see devotees doing it so much. And so the way Prabhupada taught us was you put your hands above your head, and then you'd go extreme to each side, like this. And you'd have your hands up. You see Prabhupada doing this, pictures of him in Golden Gate Park. And we'd go like this. And then the devotees eventually, they would really get into rocking it. I mean, they would just start going like this, and then, you know, up like this. And then everybody in synchronization. So everyone would be going together. No one would be out of step. And if you're out of step, they go, you know, get in step, get in line. So you'd see all this nice swinging going on when somebody would come by the kirtan, and they would just get mesmerized and totally bewildered. And then they'd stop and look. Of course, and then they would take some literature, some incense. At that time we had incense. There was a big incense factory downstairs with Gaur Hari. He was the temple president at that time. Dristadumna, Gaur Hari, myself, and Sudas. And they would make, we would dip the incense in containers. So this was like totally bizarre. You had punks. They called them punks. They were like big fake things of incense. And then you dip them in. This is an Indian incense. You dip them in to an alcohol-based flavored smell, and then it would come out again, and then you let them dry, and then you package them. Spiritual Sky Incense. We've been making our own. We have the Spiritual Sky pack. It's called Spiritual Sky Incense. That was one of the ways that the temple would make money. They'd go around, and someone would go out traveling selling the Spiritual Sky Incense to all the head shops, or, different hippie shops. So that was another way how they would also collect funds. And also the way that they would get people is they'd hand out the BTG, and then in the BTG would have the name of the temple. Then the devotee would point at the name of the temple. Here's our address. Don't forget, come to our Sunday feast. So that would be the big thing, is to come to our Sunday feast. Because some people would come during the weekdays, during the day, and there wouldn't be anybody there. I mean, the temples were empty. And we would all be out in the street. And the only ones that would be left behind were either the pujari, the cook, and maybe pujari, cook, and then sometimes there'd be one person, at that time it was Udamojo, who went to New Vrindavan, and he'd be on the steps and making ghee wicks, more or less pujari work, and guarding the temple. And so we'd all be out in Sankirtan. Oh yeah, so then when you come is that they would ask you, the way I ended up staying, they'd ask you, do you want to stay over? And here I am, 17 years old, and I'm going, sure. So that's how the ball got rolling. I said, okay, this is another experience, why not? I'll stay over and see what happens. And it happened. And then, many times you would be pushed or challenged to shave up. Come on, you've seen this now. You've been here a week or two, you know our philosophy, why don't you shave up? Because some other people would come, they wouldn't shave up right away. But it was funny, because when Gaur Hari shaved me up, then he goes, look at that false ego down in the wastebasket. He said, that is your false ego. You know what I mean? Immediately they're hitting you with heavy philosophy from the beginning, You're going, wow, it was very intense. And also the thing is, it was hard for me. I was a very independent person. I didn't listen to anybody. Because, young, you think you know it all. And stupid, young and stupid. And you had to obey the temple president and the temple commander. So they came around and said, you got to go wash pots. You can't say, I didn't want to wash pots. No, you'd wash pots. Or you'd be out the door, or there'd be something. Okay, well, you're not going to get any ma on your plate when we come around for feeding you. I say, oh, okay, I'll go wash some pots. So I became an expert pot washer, you know what I mean? Like me, like many other devotees, we would wash pots. And they said, the more you scrub, the more you're cleaning your heart for Krishna. So I like that because it's shiny. I go, yeah, my own shiny. The ego would get puffed up thinking, oh yes, I'm getting very purified. You were getting purified. But you're kind of like speeding it up a lot, thinking that you're really, really going somewhere. You follow the same schedule as everyone else from the start. So there was no slack. In other words, you didn't have it now where you have a beginners group, you know what I mean? It was funny because when you came in the door, if you weren't married, you wore orange. Well, it's not like that, and that's how it was earlier in ISKCON. Now it's where you wear white or yellow, or sometimes they have different colors like in Mayapur for the kids. And then after that, once you get initiated, then you would wear orange. So otherwise you'd be wearing white like the Grihastas. So that's something that's changed. And the Grihastas would also wear yellow, and they wear yellow like head to toe. You'd have a yellow kurta, then you have yellow dhoti, and it would be, but then eventually that faded and it was only white. But early in the movement, you'd see there was one old BTG, and everyone's wearing yellow, right in front of Boston Square. And so this is what you do. You wake up at Mangal Artik, you have Mangal Artik at 4:30 in the morning, and sometimes what we would do, we would have a tape of Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada, it was very nice that they'd light up the incense, and then they had frankincense and myrrh. So you'd open the curtains and all the smoke would come billowing out, and then you'd have Prabhupada either chanting Vande Hum or the Samsara prayers, and all the lights would be out. So only the light was coming from the altar. So it was a real spiritual experience. I mean, it was just to see it and hear Prabhupada's pure voice chanting, and that early in the morning, it was just very intense. And other times someone would lead, and then afterwards, and there'd be Tulsi Puja, and then you would have, it was either before or after Bhagavatam. Do you remember, Mati, you'd have a little reading of Ishopanishad and a little of Nectar of Devotion. But I don't remember if that was before class or after class.
I'm 6 years younger.
Oh, okay, okay. So yeah, because things did change as the push came more and more to get out the door to try to collect funds, because the temple had to be taken care of. As more people came, you needed more food, you have to have a bigger feast, you'd be having festivals, devoted. We would travel to go see Prabhupada or something, we'd have to save up for that. Oh yeah, and the way we would do it is that all the women would be, like we'd be in a straight line, so all the women on this side and all the men on this side. Or you'd have it where, sometimes you'd have it where you'd have the men in front and the women in back, or the women on two sides like this, and then the men in the middle. You know, there's different ways how we would do the kirtan depending on how it was. And it wasn't, because people hadn't seen this before, some were shocked when they saw the kirtan. Some were angry, some were violent. We would have a lot of fights.
Wow.
People would just come up and try to punch somebody, a devotee, or they'd come up and try to molest the women. I mean, it would just be crazy. It was just unbelievable. Well, Prabhupada said that in the beginning. First they'll laugh at you, then they'll hate you and try to kill you, and then in the end they accept you. Hopefully they'll love us. So it would happen like that. I've been shot at before. I didn't know what it was. One time we were on Harinam, and I kept hearing this on the wall, because it was a brick wall behind us, and I kept hearing, and I kept looking. I see little chips out of the brick. I guess the guy was either using a pellet gun or a BB gun. I think it could have been a 22. I don't know, but. Keshava was there at that time, and Keshava was a big Sankirtan leader. Him and Buddhimanta, they were traveling through. And then he said, we're being fired, we're being shot at, let's get out of here. So then he fouled us off quick, and we went around the corner, and then we went back to the car, and we went somewhere else. So I was like, getting shot at? You know what I mean? That was a shock to me, because, I'd hear about people getting shot, but it was mostly either down south, with the civil rights movement or something, but here's the Hare Krishnas were getting shot at. Other times there'd be someone who would come up and just, devotees talking to him, he'd just go up and punch the devotee. Wow. And I'd go running over and I'd want to jump on him, you know what I mean, just due to my passion and nature, and start beating the guy. But then I said, oh yeah, I'm in public and I'm not supposed to do that. And but sometimes it would get very bad, like in LA and in New York City. We'd have some really crazy people that wouldn't leave us alone. Like a lot of times it would be Christian preachers that would, just scream and coming up at us and say, okay, stop, back off. They wouldn't do it. So, and then sometimes people would come in and just start pushing us. You know what I mean? Crazy violence. So what we would do is we had to develop a strategy. We said, okay, all the devotees go around, this person goes in the middle, the men in the middle, and then everyone face outward except the ones in the middle, boo, 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 boo. And then afterwards, we just all walk away, and the person would be here like that. And they stop bothering us. They get the message. Because some of these people will come out day after day after day after day and to harass us. And after a while, it was bringing down the morale of the devotees. And so then after a while, they caught on. Hey, the Hare Krishnas aren't just peaceful. If you bother them, they might do something. So the message started to catch on. And because it would be very intense. I mean, people throw rocks at you. Our temple would sometimes be invaded, attacked at night. When I first came to the temple, when I went outside after I came back from Sankirtan, I look up at the windows and I go, why do you have bars in all the windows? And the bars are real close together. They said, oh, that's, you'll see. So, and at night one time, they had it, I was there, and somebody started throwing rocks at the temple. And I'm going like, I'm waking up and I'm going, oh my God, well, it's hard enough as it is. And someone's throwing rocks at the temple. 2 or 3 people out there throwing rocks at the temple, trying to break windows and whatever. And then Gauri would go out running after them with an antenna. And they'd be scared, because here it is, there's a Hare Krishna in a Gamsha with a shaved head, screaming at the top of his lungs. Right? And then it would be crazy like that. And people would, you know, sometimes they hear that now, you go, are you serious? Yes, sometimes you can be very violent. It was just so strange, we'd have to defend ourselves. We had it in New York where the Italians, we were in an Italian neighborhood on Henry Street when I went there later on, because I was on a traveling road show and then eventually we wound up in New York. And so there was a thing, they don't have it anymore, but there's a thing on the East Coast they used to call Mischief Night. Mischief Night was the night before Halloween. And people would go out and throw toilet paper and eggs at police cars and throw paint and everything. So I guess that this time they thought it was the Hare Krishna temple they were going to attack. And they had it where the devotees would come back from Harinam, and when they would come back, they would we'd have to let them in the gate. So that all these people would be holding their eggs, and they'd wait until we opened the front door, and then 100 eggs would go in the front door. Yeah, it was wild. It was wild. And so we'd have to deal with things like that. And there was ways how we dealt with it, believe me. There was ways how we dealt with it. But it was just a way of trying to just protect yourself, because they thought we had a machine gun nest up in they thought the Tulsi house was a machine gun nest. And they called the police, and the police came to investigate. It's like really too much. You know, they thought there's so many strange things. It's how in the beginning, a culture shock, people perceive you in so many different ways.
How many devotees were there, Prabhuji, in this?
Oh, we had a lot of devotees. We'd have about 30. In Boston, when I joined there, we had about 30, 35 people. New York Temple would be about 200. I mean, there's a lot of devotees.
Wow.
There was a lot of devotees then. And because, you know, Prabhupada's potency and how just the push and the drive, and they saw how determined the devotees were, and they were just like, it was overwhelming. I mean, you know, you felt the Shakti, you felt the energy, it was intense. Just specifically, I remember the impotency that they had is that I was going to a Led Zeppelin concert in New York Fillmore East, and all of a sudden I hear they did a ching, 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 ching. And sometimes people walk by and go ching, ching, ching to us and, when we were on Sankirtan, you know, chanting. But I heard the sound, the transcendental sound of the kartals in 1, 2, 3. And everybody who was waiting in front just turned around, and it was almost like all other sounds stopped. And Bharadwaja was leading the kirtan, and the way he played Madunga, and he was in the front, and then he kind of like go back and forth like this, the party behind him. And everyone just watching was just like a time warp. And then as soon as they went by, it was like, whoop, and then everyone turned right back down again, passionate, going right in. But it caught everybody, just like grabbed their super soul, like grabbed them and turned them around. And then they'd hear the holy name. It was just unbelievable. I still remember that, the potency of the holy name. It was very intense, very intense. So you go out, okay, so for prasadam in the morning, they laid down, it'd be a bare floor, just like this. They lay down a wax paper. Then they come and then they would put on an oatmeal or farina or halava, they put it down. Then you'd have like 2 chickpeas, and then you'd have a chunk of ginger root, and then you'd have like a yogurt drink. And we were so naive in those days. We have a pot of yogurt like this, and they make the yogurt in an aluminum pot. And so you'd see a swirl of aluminum in the yogurt, and then they just mix it in, and they go around and pour it to everybody, you know. It's just like, we were, very, you know, in many ways very naive. But then later on in New York, they got copper pots for cooking. And that was amazing. I'd never seen copper pots this big. I was watching them. And it was like, how do you get, I'd never seen anything like that in my life. Copper pots, everything from copper from India. Wow. So gigantic, so gigantic copper pots. And so everything was copper in New York. So that was quite an amazing. That was another culture shock. I'd never seen that much copper in one, you know, you'd see pennies, but here's big giant pots like this. So I'd say, why are they so big? You know, well, they took all that subji for all the devotees and then the guests that would come. And so then after prasadam, then you'd all go into the van, you'd all jam into the van, and you'd have your kartals, you'd have BTGs, Back to Guided Magazines, on chantings, and then I'd bring a little drum. I had a little drum, and I'd bring along my milk crate. I'd put the drum inside the milk crate, and then what we'd do is we'd go in front of, we'd move around. We would be from Boston Commons, then we would go down the side of Macy's, and we'd sit there, and I'd put down my little egg crate, then I'd put the drum down between my knees. It was like a little dolak, and then just play. You'd play for 8 hours. You'd go on for 8 or 10 hours. He was totally in. You'd go out like Friday nights. You'd go out all day. Then you come back and they'd say, okay, tonight we're all going out, and they'd bring out flags and conch shells, and there'd be 200 devotees with flags and then roaring kirtan, and we go down to right where they do New Year's. I'm trying to think, it's Times Square. Thank you, Times Square. We go down to Times Square, and then you'd have so many crazy people and the drunks and everything. But we'd be doing kirtan like anything, and it was very potent, very very potent indeed. And then when we would go out all day, you'd have kitchery. And the old milk containers were made out of paper, thick, white paper, thick paper. And then they'd be in half-gallon containers. So we'd take those and open them up, and then we'd fill them full of kitchery. So we'd bring like 4 or 5 of them. Then we had breadsticks. So it'd be bread, made until like this. And then they deep fry it. And then they put it into the milk containers. So we'd have like 5 of those, depending on the size of the party. And then you have all your different juice and water, and then you have that. So we would lug all this stuff around with us all day long. And then you'd have the book bag and so many different things, to carry your books. And we would switch. At that time, I was mostly kirtan, chanting leader. So I would just chant for 8 hours. And they'd have different people switch off doing back to guided magazines, incense, they'd stop. The best-selling persons were the women. The women were the best sellers, because they knew how to just stop them in and then get them to take, and then they would get so many donations like that. And then we would come back at 5, and sometimes we would do kirtan on the train. Sometimes we would take the train if we didn't have the van. If there was a concert or something, we would take it's not subway, but it's like a trolley car kind of in Boston. And so we'd be on there and we'd sit down. I mean, devotees would just be so... Now imagine that. You come into a trolley, you sit down, you start doing kirtan. And some people would get up and walk away, and other people would sit there and just look at it. It's like, you guys crazy, And so when we would just go on, and then after a while, some people get angry, and then other people, they go, no, keep doing it, you know what I mean? They like to toss it up to see, what was going to go on. So that would be quite funny. And that would go on and on. Then we'd get back to the temple, you take a shower, then you wouldn't take prasadam because you had lunch out there. So then you come back, take a shower, you go into Sundar Artik. Everyone had to be into Sundar Artik. They made sure, where is he? Where's so-and-so? Where's she? They make sure you're all in there, they have a roster, okay. They check it off, okay, here, okay, go here, they can check, here. They go all the way down the line. And then you had to be in there. So it was very tight, and everybody knew what everybody was doing. If you're in Maya, we talk to each other. Oh, yes, it's really hard, Okay, but we'll work together, I'll be your buddy today, and we'll go around, and together we'll work together, You don't go buy that chocolate, and I've seen you go buy that chocolate. Don't go buy the chocolate, chocolate bar and all that. So we would help each other, and it was very tight. And okay. Oh yeah. Then after the Sunday feast. Well, first I'll go to the regular day. Then after the regular day, then you'd have Bhagavad Gita class. Well, we used to have Tulsi Puja in the evening too, and the Bhagavad Gita class. And then afterwards, you'd have Krishna book with hot milk, and then you'd have popcorn. So then when it was Chaturmasya, that 1 month, you wouldn't have milk, you would have, curds and whey. And that was great. I mean, I liked the curds and whey a lot. It was fun. And so that way you'd have enough. But I didn't realize that by drinking a lot of milk, Hare Krishna Mata, Haribol. So I didn't realize that by drinking a lot of milk, I get more and more mucus. And sometimes it'd be hard to chant, in kirtan because you'd be so clogged up. So I'd eat more ginger root. So, when you're young, you'd eat tons and tons of prasadam. So that was something that, and then as soon as we get in the van, you'd be like... And sometimes it was actually embarrassing because you'd have devotees like this and the saliva would be coming out of their mouth. And people would see us, and then actually some people actually call the temple and say, what's wrong with you guys? Every time you guys get on a train, like in New York, in the subway, It's like you don't sleep, you sleep in the subway. It's just, you're exhausted, and there's saliva coming out of some of their mouths, and they're snoring, and and then as soon as we get to our stop, it'd be like a quick stop, and we go, and then the devotee go, bing, 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 everybody wake up, and then we go running up the stairs, the people would be looking at us like, people are totally crazy. It's a cult, So it would be pretty wild. And then after Sunday feasts, after getting all that sugar in your blood, devotees would bounce off the walls doing kirtan. They'd be doing somersaults and crazy stuff, running up and down the temple, like they're stepping, doing the side step, all the way down and all the way back, and then everyone would be going wild. The women would be on the one side of the temple, and the men would be on the other, because it'd be packed. So it'd be solid women, solid men, wall to wall, and everybody would be jumping up and down, and then sometimes I'd be underneath, and I'd look at the floor, and the floor would go. Because they'd jump up, and then they'd jump down, and the floor would just go like, I'm surprised that the floor didn't cave in, and they'd be going like this, It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable to see, but that was some of the intensity of the kirtan. And of course, people thought that, the Christian community thought that we were worshiping the devil because of the deities, that Krishna's black, therefore he's the devil. And so in New York, when we moved out, they burnt down the whole building. Yeah, they just burned down the whole building because they thought, oh, these people are crazy, and they're in black magic, devil worship, and all this. So totally crazy. So then after a while, then we'd be getting bigger places. But at the same time, there was an intensity, to collect, because also for printing, because we'd be printing our own books. ISKCON Press in New York, we'd be churning books out, Nectar Devotion, Ishopanishad, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Bhagavad Gita, and then it would come along where eventually we started getting into bigger and bigger books, selling bigger and bigger books out on the street. And that was the main income for the temple. I mean, we didn't have people donating, giving us any money. You didn't see that. I mean, it was all hard work, sweat of the brow. Oh, then we were famous in New York. They'd have these monster parades. New York has some of the biggest parades in the world. I mean, these things would go on for like 15 miles, these parades. And so what we did is that we would think, okay, today's a parade. Oh, is today a parade? Oh, okay. We're going. Okay, we don't have permission. We're going. He said, so how are we going to get in here? And one time I got an idea. I said, I'll show you how to do it. And what happened is, because when you're young, a lot of times you get these sneaky ideas. And so they would have a big distance between each either float or group. And this was on St. Patrick's Day parade. I said, when it opens up, you wait for the even distance, then you file straight in, and this is across, these New York City streets that were real wide. Well, like sometimes 2 of these wide. I mean, it'd be huge, or sometimes like this. And so all the men would go in, then all the women would go in, and then we do the Swami step, which is jumping forward. So everybody would be in step, and we'd do this. We'd be going forward. And we'd be going like, and so we'd be in rhythm like this. And then we just start chanting, and go like that. So everybody would be in the exact sync, so we're all doing the same thing. So people thought it was a show. They said, oh, who are these guys? You know what I mean? And they'd be looking at us. And we got away with this for like 3 or 4 parades. Wow. And then one time they had it, and this was the funniest part, they had it where on New York, someone's watching, a devotee had actually seen this on TV. And this is where then the police called us up, the chief of police called us up. And he's going like, and here's the Mickey Mouse float. And here's a Donald Duck float, and they're going on talking, and this is wonderful, and look how it's 50 feet tall or whatever, And here, next, huh? The Hare Krishnas? Huh? And they're looking at his, totally bewildered. They totally caught them off guard. So then the police call us up and say, I know you guys mean well, and I know you don't mean any harm, but you have to get permission to be in a parade. You can't just come in. So please, it's very hard for us. We get these calls, then we got to go get you guys. So we had it where one time, it's actually on film, in one of the early Hare Krishna movies. I was playing drum. Jai Sachinanda was dressed up as Balaram, or Krishna, I forget which color it is. You can see it in the film. Yadabar was filming. And then Shravaniya was dressed up, I forget, maybe she was dressed up as Balaram. But anyway, so we had it, and then the cops knew we weren't supposed to be there. So what happened is that they stood like this. They stood like this. And so what happened is that I said, spin. So we just started spinning. We went right through their arms, and they're like, and then they laughed. They thought, this is funny, man. These guys are smart. So then ran up another half a block, and they locked arms, and then they looked at us like this. And then we got the message. We said, okay. And then we got off. You know, but these are the things that we would do. We would get away with. You know, because we want publicity, you know, we want to be, you know, on the news like that and be seen, and you know what I mean? Because when you have a parade, you've got millions of viewers, not just on TV, but even out on the street and everything. And one time, in St. Patrick's Day parade, there's a thing in Christianity where still, on St. Patrick's Day, you only wear green. You don't wear orange. Green, in the Irish flag, they have it for Ireland. They have green, what is it, green, white, and orange. Yeah. And, yeah? Green, white, and orange? Yeah, you know it. Okay. So in there, people will say, well, the orange are the Protestants, the green are the Catholics. So they're always fighting each other, but they put it in the flag as unity. You know, we're all one country. So when we go by on the street, we're all dressed in orange. It's on St. Patrick's Day. And then all of the Irish are coming out of the bars, they're screaming and yelling at us and throwing stuff. And I said, they're the only ones that are acting that way. Is there something wrong? They go, you're dressed in orange. You know, we're all dressed in orange, you know. So it was like, oh my gosh, Cully, you guys, this is too much. So that's another crazy thing like that would happen. And so, you know, we became famous as Hare Krishnas because they'd see us out there dancing and people loved us. Some loved us, some of us hated us, you know, it was just different reactions for different things. And it would go on like this for some years. And then I went to India, of course, is that, you know, India was a whole nother can of adventure. And the thing is, devotees were very adventurous. The devotees would go out on traveling Sankirtan, and you take a van, the longest vans you could get, and then they would make a rack, a wooden rack. They put all the books underneath, and then on top they would sleep. So you'd sleep in the van, take a shower wherever you could go, which would be like a park or something, you know, and they have pay showers or something like that. And so you'd be out just distributing books, and you'd have to make your own little schedule. You'd have your morning chanting japa, kirtan, everything, eating in the van. So this is called traveling Sankirtan. And this is very austere. Sometimes they had women parties who were just women. Sometimes they have men parties. And they'd go out maybe for a month, and then they'd come back, and they'd go into different areas, different zones. And so this would go on, and this was also very, very successful. But the part that would create sometimes the strain would be when Prabhupada was coming to some temple. And would say, how many hours are away from that temple? You know, and all the devotees would be talking, and they'd say, oh, 2 hours? We could drive there. You know, and somebody would say, yeah, but what are the temple president going to say? You know what I mean? So they talk to the temple president, he'd say no or something, and then all the devotees would be whining, you know, for days. He said, all right, okay, we're going to go. You know, then we'd all pile in, and then we'd drive all the way up there, and it would just be totally wild, because there'd be like 200 or 300 devotees in a temple, and it would just be jam-packed. I mean, you couldn't get in, sometimes you couldn't get out. It was just like sardines sometimes. And it would be very intense. It would be a lot of prasadam. They'd have festivals, and Prabhupada would be there, and it would just be quite amazing. Quite amazing. So all of this was just very enlivening. And then Rath Yatras. One of the first Rath Yatras I've been to was in Philadelphia. And it was just gigantic in front of the, you know, go near the White House and all these amazing areas. And we have these monster carts. And Buffalo, New York, you know, the Rath Yatras. A lot of amazing things would happen. One time I saw the Rath Yatra car roll. Somehow, before we had wheel guards, I saw a lady, the wheel caught the back of her shoe, and then somehow her leg went underneath. It was folded like this, and then the cart rolled right over it. And then this, you know, full Rath Yatra cart. And then afterwards we're going, are you okay, are you okay, okay? I said, yeah, I'm okay. And she got up and she was walking, and I'm going like,
oh my God. I
said, how much that thing weigh? You know what I mean? These strange things would happen sometimes of the Lord's mercy, you know, where that should have broke each bone and in her thigh and her ankle, but nothing happened to her. So that was you know, you see things like that sometimes. And so this would be very intense. So we would come back, and a lot of times devotees, the sad thing would be we're such a tight family that sometimes devotees would, they say, okay, so-and-so's going because he has to expand his service to go here or go there. And we would be like, oh, we're going to miss you. How are we going to see you? You know? And every so often they'd write letters and stuff, but it was heart-rending. You know, it was heart-rending that this person was leaving. I mean, it meant something. Then you'd have it other times that someone we used to call bloop, and probably would give the example. He says, just like when you drop a stone in the water, it goes bloop, the sound. So that would mean that you're going back into the material world. And sometimes the person would leave, and then they all of a sudden just disappear. And then sometimes you'd see them at the Sunday feast, and you go, hey, how you doing? What's going on? We missed you, you know. We would go to kirtan together. I need your voice, and you know. And sometimes the person would feel encouraged, and they'd come back. Other times they would have personal problems. Sometimes they join too quick. But it's never too quick, because, you know, when you join Krishna consciousness, it's always a battle going on in the mind, in the body, about, you know, don't want to do this? Do I want to do this? Don't I want to do this? But then eventually, after a while, over the years, you notice you're getting purified more and more. And it would be a very wonderful feeling. And then every so often, Krishna and Lord Chaitanya would give you these little bliss bulbs, you know, all of a sudden, poof, you know, and you feel ecstasy, and you start crying, and you feel ecstasy, and it really pump you up, because you say, there's something to this, there's some taste here. You know, just like it says in the Kevala Ashtakam, Madaram Madarebhyopi, more sweeter than all other sweet things. Mangalebhyopi Mangalam, more auspicious than all other auspicious things. Pavanam Pavanebhyopi, the greatest deliverer of all delivering things. The greatest purifier of all purifying things. Yeah. Harinam Eva Kevalam. So that's the potency of the Hare Krishna mantra. It can do so many amazing things to change you. And Prabhupada gave it for free. Other yoga groups were charging. We weren't charging anything. We said it's for free. And many times devotees in Sankirtan, they'd have sometimes really get into some intense preaching right there on the street. Sometimes arguing with Christians, sometimes talking just with Christians, sometimes just talking with people. They were interested. Many times the Indians, they would just look at us like, who are you? You're a bunch of hippies, you know what I mean? Other times, other people that were like from more religious families, they'd really appreciate it. They'd go, wow, this is amazing. Who's your Swamiji? You know, and they'd want, and then they get the BTG, and slowly they were coming. One of the, there was one, in New York Temple, there was one Pakistani devotee, my god brother, then there was Gopal Krishna, who became Gopal Krishna Maharaj, Guru, JBC, everything. He was there at that time. He was working for Pepsi or Coca-Cola. I don't remember which one. But he would come at the end of the night, you know what I mean? He'd come, and he'd be dressed in his business suit, you know, and he'd be in kirtan, take prasadam. And he was older, you know what I mean? So I couldn't relate, because he was an older person. You know what I mean? A lot of times you relate with people your own age, and, you know, it's kind of like the mentality that we have. So when I went to India, that was amazing, because at that time, that's why Prabhupada called us the white elephants. Because not only had the Indian people never seen people like this before, number two is that in the temples, it was basically all Europeans and Americans. You didn't have Indians. I mean, in Boston, in Bombay, you had Lokanath, you had, gosh, you could almost count the people on your hand who you had. Haridas. I mean, there's others, but I can't remember all their names, but the majority would be European and people from Europe. And you might have a few from South America or something, but it would be mostly, because these are people that Prabhupada said, I want devotees from the United States and from Europe to come to India. And if you want to stay in India, you can stay in India. And at that time, you could get like a 4-year entry visa. Now it's fine, but you could get a 4-year entry visa. But then the next thing would come in, is that the Hare Krishnas are the CIA. that one really blew my mind, because I'm going like, huh? What are you talking about? And what it is because there was so much money coming in from the States. Now try to understand, this was mystic power, where the United States at that time was going through a recession, heavy recession. And I remember Budi Manta and Kesha were coming back to the temple. They would have a shower bucket, you know, this high, of just change, and they'd spill it on the floor. They'd lay down a cloth. They'd spill it on the floor, and I'm going like, there'd be 2 buckets like that. And then they would be counting their money. I mean, they would just be pulling in every day, be coming in. And the way it started is that Prabhupada was in India at the Kumbh Mela in 1971. And a gentleman came up with a conch shell filled with grain. And when Prabhupada received it, he said, oh, he said, now Lakshmi Devi has come to the movement. You know, and then it started. It just started to happen. And different devotees like Tripurari had mystic power. The things that they could do, I mean, it was just, you couldn't believe the power that some of these people.
Like what? Give an example.
One was, he just talked to someone, and then they'd be walking away, and they'd be about from here to the door, and he'd say, the wallet. And the guy would just, and he'd come back, walk all the way back, and he'd hand his wallet. And we're like, you know what I mean? Because the thing is that some of it was mind working with the mind, but some of it was Shakti, and Prabhupada even said that, is that, you know, so the Tripurari, you know, he had Shakti. It's one of the vibhutis, they call it. And it was empowerment like that. And I ran into so many situations. I remember I was at Vishnu Swami, and we went into Harlem. And we got separated, not intentionally. We got separated. I wound up like 165th Street, and a black lady came up to me and said, white people don't come this far. I said, oh, okay, thank you very much. And then before I knew it, wouldn't you know it, 4 guys come up to me, you know what I mean? And then they said that they're going to rob me. They didn't have guns or anything, but they said, hey, we want your money. They start going through my pockets and my shirt and everything. And so then I just started saying, Namo Vishnu Padaya, you know, like Draupadi, you know, Krishna Padaya. I said, I'm going to get the tar beat out of me. Like this, and I just start chanting, and then I just take incense, I put it in each one of their hands, I put it in chanting in each one of their hands, and I walked away. I said, oh, they're going to hit me from behind. And I just kept walking, nothing happened. And I went, wow, you know. And that usually wouldn't happen like that. You know, white boy in Harlem, and this is during the racial riots and everything. So the Krishna protects his devotee. And we've had so many times where devotees would get in car wrecks. They'd fall asleep, and then Prabhupada would have to say there'd be one driver that would be awake and one person driving. We lost so many devotees who'd be killed in car wrecks. Bad, real bad. In one time, Dwarkadish, he was in one with these other Guru coolies, and this vehicle crashed. And when the firemen came up, all of a sudden this door opens, and then the devotees start coming out, and they go, how do you survive that? If anyone else would have been killed, all you would have been killed, because the car was flattened and everything, and somehow they came out of the car and they were just totally shocked. So Krishna many times would protect the devotees, but sometimes we'd lose 4 at a time. Sometimes they'd fall asleep, or they'd have the Mother Malati tells the story about her experience. They'd have these gas heaters, and it would turn off. The pilot light would turn off. Then all the oxygen, it'd be cold outside, and you'd have everything tight. And then all of a sudden is that, you know, we had 4 devotees from New Vrindavan that just died like that, you know. So, you know, Prabhupada wanted that, hey, we have to pay attention, you know what I mean? Don't create situations like this. Try to make sure and be intelligent about what you're doing, you know, and driving and everything. And so it would, you know, eventually it didn't happen as much, but it would be like that. And let's see, okay. Oh, then also the thing is, we had it too, that we would be wearing, in other words, when they would go out and buy something, like it would become winter, they'd go out and buy 30 jackets, and then all the devotees would be wearing the same jackets. So, you know, after a while you had to start putting your name inside. You said, well, that's my jacket. No, that's my jacket. No, my jacket's, that's too dirty for my jacket. You know what I mean? The whole thing, and then you'd have to, you know. So that was a hard thing to get used to, because I didn't like it when, you know what I mean, well, I'm going to wear this jacket today, and shoes too. There'd be shoes, and then you'd go, okay, well, those shoes don't fit me. Who took my shoes? You know, everyone would have the same shoes. So that would be an annoyance. That was another one that took a while to get used to. And then devotees, sometimes they'd buy their own shoes because it was too much complaining. We were always thinking of ways to spread the preaching. So different devotees because you'd always be trying to please Srila Prabhupada. I mean, you had an aim, and it was very intense. You said, okay, I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to concentrate, and we're going to do something to please Srila Prabhupada. You'd want to do something to get his attention. So Abhinanda had the brilliant idea, and he wrote a letter to Prabhupada, and the letter never came back to him. It was hidden by the GBC. They didn't want him to get it. And so, but he said, I'm going to go to India. We're going to do library parties. I said, I'll go with you, Abhi. So it was just Abhinanda and myself. And Abhinanda had been involved in the jewelry business. It was called Jagannath Jury up in Seattle. So what happened is that this was a good amount of money. But Jai Tirtha, who was the GBC at that time, he was very interested. He said, well, wait a minute, you're brahmacharis, you don't have any money. We said, no, we're going to use this for preaching. So the money's going to preaching. It's not going for us. It's not going for me. This is going for preaching. So we went on, and Hare Krishna Mata. And I said, no. I said, we're not giving up. I said, I'm going to nail this. We're just going to stay on this, and we're not budging. And then finally, Jai Tirtha gave up. He said, okay. He said, you're going to go preaching. It's for Prabhupada. Okay, you can have it. All right. So he gave it to us. And then we linked up with Gargamuni, and then we ended up buying, there was 6 vans. There were Mercedes-Benz vans. We bought in Germany. We drove from Germany all the way to India, and then we started doing the library programs along with Pandals. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Then they would do Pandal. So we'd have a big Pandal at night, with 15,000 Indians. We do it at these the Burla factory, these different factories. I remember we did it at the Parthasarthi temple down in Madras. We had there, it was a Ramanuj temple. We did a program there. There were so many people. And then you'd have these big pandals, like with the Chutnanda, for a while we tried with the Chutnanda in 75. And then we do pandals down there, and you'd have so many people, and you distribute books and prasadam, and it was just so totally overwhelming. And so then also is that Prabhupada was very pleased with the library party because, putting his books in the library, so he wanted people to get this. Then we started getting Hindi, because in the beginning we only had books in English, and then we started getting Hindi Bhagavatam, and then, eventually Gujarati, and then they started going into, we would say, okay, we have a Gujarati Bhagavatam, So these different books, and then people were just getting interested. And we made so many standing orders, in that way, and Prabhupada was very pleased with that. But devotees were thinking of different ideas, how to spread Krishna consciousness very desperately. I mean, there was a lot of energy in it. It was a great push. And that's one reason why also is that so many people were joining, because they saw how fired up devotees were. And there was competition too. Just like when we went over to Germany, we had it where when Hansa Duda's group, because he was in charge of the GBC of Germany, when they saw that we bought these vans and they were driving them to India, he goes, we can do that too. So he got like 2 buses, and then they ended up driving to India, after us, you know what I mean? And then they'd compete, well, we're going to do this here, and then you're over there, and then we got this state, and you got that state. It was pretty funny sometimes. Yeah, Pandal's library party, yeah. And then 21. So that's basically it. Oh, and then also Prabhupada wanted farms. That's why he started New Vrindavan. That was a whole thing. There was devotees that were into nature and everything, or they were from a farming background. And they would go to these farms, and they'd try to start farms, but some devotees didn't have a clue what they were doing. And so many of these farms closed down, because they start with one idea, but they didn't either know how to deal with cows, they didn't have a slicing about growing the right grain, and when it would come, and they'd be just totally overwhelmed. So a lot of them folded, different farms in different places, but slowly, then eventually, slowly, devotees would start to learn, and like I said, New Vrindavan went through so many ups and downs, and then finally now it's, it's starting to come along. But down in Andhra Pradesh, when I was in Hyderabad, Prabhupada, he did a pandal there, and he was blasting the Mayavadis. I just couldn't believe how strong he was preaching. It's really, I had tapes of every one of his lectures. I went in for like 5 days. But somehow, I don't know what happened, only like 2 or 3 wound up in the archives where, they're recorded. But I mean, I had all of them, and later on devotees stole them from me. I mean, it was just, I had so much stuff. But Prabhupada would be blasting, going on, and just amazing how Prabhupada was preaching. We were just in 7th heaven, how intensely Prabhupada would be preaching. So Prabhupada wanted to go to the farm, which was Medchel, which is that way out in the country. And when we went out there, I mean, they had a huge well and everything that they had dug open. It was an open pit, water reservoir. And extremely cold, very nice. And then Prabhupada came there, and then you see him, his one picture, he has his knee up like this, and he's leaning against a gray tree. It's the only picture like it. And that was in Medchel. That was in the Hyderabad farm. And so Prabhupada would be preaching about Varnashram Dharma, and in the end, Prabhupada said, 50% of my preaching still needs to be done, and that's Varnashram. where he wanted to have farms because he said, you know, your banks will fail, and eventually, you know, devotees will have to come to the farms. So that was a big thing that, but back then it was just, we were all too passionate, you know, we were born in the cities, and so we were stuck with, you know, doing Sankirtan in the cities. So, but then, you know, slowly things have been developing, slowly. And that's just about it. Are there any questions? Oh, in the morning sometimes too, when we would put on the japa tape of Srila Prabhupada, you'd have a whole temple room of devotees. Imagine the intensity. All the men were chanting japa, all the women were chanting japa. And everybody would be chanting japa very intensely. So as soon as you came from the outside and walked in the temple room, we'd be like, whoa. It was like you just stepped into another dimension. Because everyone's chanting the mantra, you know, japa, intensely. And then you had, you know, you'd have like 60 people, you know, chanting japa, or, I mean, very intensely. And then you'd have Prabhupada chanting japa in the background. He'd play the tape of Prabhupada chanting japa. So that was a big thing that sometimes you don't always see. Sometimes you see it now, sometimes you don't see it. It's different in India. Like in India, I don't think they play the Prabhupada tape of Prabhupada chanting japa, but we would listen to it in the States. And yeah, I think that's just about it. Now, what time do we stop? Okay. Yes, Mata.
I just wanted to say, because you had mentioned Bhardraj, that later on I had met up with Bhardraj in LA, and he had us do marathons to build those museums. We were working all night long.
Oh, yeah.
And it was simply by his stories of the old days, his stories of Prabhupada, and his kirtans that we kept going. Yeah,
Prabhupada loved his kirtans. Prabhupada would call for Bhardwaja to come and do kirtan when he was lying down in his bed. He said, "Where's Bhardwaja?" You know, he'd call, and then he'd come and do kirtan for Prabhupada. Prabhupada really liked that a lot. He really liked that. He had such a, when you listen to his kirtans, you can tell that there's no motive, there's no profile. It's just chanting from the heart. They're very nice ones. They're called the New York City kirtans. If you ever want to get them, they're called New York City kirtans. And New York Temple kirtans, and then you can get them. And that voice that you hear there mostly is Bhardwaja chanting. In India, well, there's so many things, because at that time also I worked for 1 year on the biography, researching for Satchut Maharaj. But unfortunately, because there was a fire in Gita Nagari, there was a lot of things that got destroyed. And some of these things never made it into the biography. But I'll just read one here from one Mata that's very nice. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is where Prabhupada had a godbrother that he used to go visit in Cuttack, which is just it's before you go to Jagannath Puri and before you go to Bhubaneswar Temple, and the wife. He used to see Prabhupada when he would come, and Prabhupada actually would come and stay there before he went to the States. And they used to exchange letters together. But then Prabhupada stopped writing, you know what I mean? Because when he got to the States, he was so busy that he didn't write anymore. She got upset and she destroyed all of his letters. And I went, I was very disheartened to hear that. But this is what she said. She had been very much into politics. She was very much in politics. So this is what she told me. This was back in when Prabhupada came to her home in 1962. She, Nirukanta Das, the Congress leader, joined Gandhi's movement in Calcutta after Gopal Bandhu Das. He was the first president of the All India National Congress of Orissa province, because this Cuttack is in Orissa, in case none of you know. I forget the new name. What's the new name now for Orissa? Okay. Odisha? Odisha, okay. It says, he was an atheistic scholar, Vedantist, etc. He was inimical of Chaitanya's cult in Orissa. He wrote a book called Sahitya Parikrama. It was full of Vaishnava criticisms. It caused a great upset. He was a Congress leader, so he was persisting in spreading atheism. He criticized Ramananda Roy's association with the young girls. So then Prabhupada said that, how can we think that we are gopis? We're all Prakriti, servant. They are not persons like you and me. We are so small. How can one think like this? This idea opens the gateway to hell. We should think that we are women, Prakriti. Krishna is male, Purusha. But one should not think that one can enjoy like husband and wife. This has started the whole degradation of the Vaishnava cult. Those who do not even know the ABCs of Chaitanya Leela are claiming to be PhD gopi. His Prabhupada, you know, it's like he'd be like that. This is not a small thing. Those people who dress like gopi and then go to teach MA is nonsense. How can this be a real attitude? Instead of Gopi Bhava, people should have Das Bhava. Krishna has three Shaktis, Chit, Ladini, and Maya. According to his will, they are working directly and indirectly. The cow will think of its calf, and the mother will give breast milk to the newborn baby. That is called law. It is Radha. She is the source of love in this world. It permeates throughout the world in mundane and spiritual aspects. And then Prabhupada, then she's talking some more, and then Prabhupada said, Sharada Devi said, what's your aim in life? And what do you need? I was always feeling very sorry because in the Congress movement, and then she speaks now. Now she's speaking again. I was always feeling sorry because in the Congress movement, I could not get any position as one of the 8 ministers. So Prabhupada told me that, Mataji, I'm very sorry you are still going out to the hellish nation. You shouldn't think of all these material things. You should go up, not down. Thousands of things, like ministers, have gone down. But who knows them? This is the Kala Chakra. The only ones who are remembered are Ram Raj, Krishna Raj. Those who spread Dharma, they are remembered. Mataji, I am sorry because you're so educated and all your plans failed. The people don't remember any of them, but they elected them. They only remember Rama and Krishna. Then she said, Prabhupada was always dead against Congress and the leaders about dividing the country. They're all dacoits. These are leaders? For how many days will you enjoy this power? Who could enjoy power for all days to come? Death is hanging over your head. The monarchies of Rome, Europe, who enjoyed 300 years in power, they were also killed. Don't you understand Vishwarupa and Gita? And then Srila Prabhupada opened his mouth wide. And Prabhupada had a big mouth. It is the only book written, Gita. It is the only book written in the world that you can get your answers. Simply perform your work and don't be attached to the result. Give it to God. It is stated in the 2nd chapter. He then advised me not to pollute my children. Don't give them tamas of food, meat, onions, garlic from the beginning. Otherwise they will be polluted in the brain. From the beginning, give them sattvic food. Then he lastly told me that anyone who's connected in politics will be blinded unless they are attached to Krishna Chaitanya cult. Don't go after material living, gain, or flesh enjoyment. Otherwise, the craving for money and power will only bring you unhappiness. Yeah, so anyway, it's time now. But it's just that there's so many things like this, so much nectar about Srila Prabhupada that is being documented. More and more devotees are writing books, and they're including a lot of these different things in them. That this way it'll be remembered, because now Brahmananda came out with his remembrances of Prabhupada, and then what's his name? Vaikuntanath came out with his book about Srila Prabhupada when he was with him, and so the Guru Das has his book. So and also now there's many other literatures that are coming out talking about Srila Prabhupada. So everyone, you get a chance. Also, is that catch up on these books, and then you can flow in the ocean of bliss, of Krishna consciousness. So this is one reason why we're so grateful to Srila Prabhupada, because he's more or less given us this whole movement. And it's a very wonderful thing. So we have to, Prabhupada said, if you can't expand, at least maintain what I gave you. So that's the important thing to remember. That's what we try to do in Berkeley. If we can't expand, at least maintain what he's given us, because we have such beautiful deities there that Prabhupada gave us. Prabhupada said, that is my #1 anxiety, that after I go, are you going to maintain these deities properly? So that's one thing that we're trying to do in Berkeley and many temples, It's a big project, but it requires that people get initiated, and second initiation, and they can help on the altar like that. So anyway, thank you very much, allowing me to speak and come, and it's been very wonderful. It's always wonderful to come here, and there's new faces all the time. So it's nice to see Hare Krishna, Haribol. You're seeing all these wonderful faces here. And Hare Krishna, Matajis, thank you all. Very wonderful. Hare Krishna. Yes?
May I ask, what was your first experience with Srila Prabhupada?
In the airports. And that was such a culture shock because back then they didn't have security gates. They just had a little, like thing that you walk through, like go to a little bar and you go through it, it makes that noise, and the next one, So there would be a guy there, and I had a stun gun. No, I had mace. Back then I had mace because I was in the security team. So I had mace, and I go, can I bring this in there? And he goes, no, you can't, man. So I said, here, you take it. I said, my guru's here. And he goes, hey, we run. It's the devotees would be jumping over these things, you know what I mean? And there'd be a 30, 40 at a time, like deer. And then we'd come to the place where Prabhupada was, and they'd say, Prabhupada's not at this gate, he's at the gateway over there. Then everybody go running down there. Like 200, 300 devotees. They'd all be running down there. They'd race to the airport, and they'd be driving, you know what I mean, like next to Prabhupada, like taking him back to the airport. They'd be racing next to him, because we'd see him as he'd come and as he'd go. And then the devotees said, are they driving okay? Devotees would be jockeying like this and driving crazy and trying to get into Prabhupada's car. It was really too wild. And then when Prabhupada would come out, everyone would throw flowers, and it would totally flip out the people in the airport. They'd go, who's going to clean this up? But Prabhupada would come out, and then that's when I saw him, is that he'd come out, and he'd just be beaming, you know what I mean? He'd just be, and the energy would just go, intensely, not every single time, but many, many times, he'd come in, and devotees would bow down, then they'd get up, and they'd just start crying. It would just... And then one devotee goes, shine, Srila Prabhupada, shine! And then Srila Prabhupada just the 10,000 watts smile, And just, his presence, he had presence, like the rocket Gibraltar. He was very, very potent. He'd come in and just, everyone would go crazy. And then all the people at the airport, they'd all be looking like, who in the hell is that? Who is this person? They want to see, why are all these people going crazy? Why are they so enthusiastic? Why it's all these young people? And it'd be like that. It'd be very, very intense. And then we'd all show out, and then we'd go to the airport, and then then they'd all come to the temple, and then the neighbors would be looking at the windows like, is the president here? Is the mayor? They'd be looking like, what's going on over there, So it was intense. So the airport, that was the first time. And then, other times you get close, because it'd be, that picture where Prabhupada's going around and he grabs the bell? He's walking around the old Mayapur temple and he grabs the bell, and it's all marble. And what happened is, all of a sudden it became like a funnel like this. It was wide, then it got thin. And I was up front, and I got pushed in front, and then I wound up, at one point you could see my green hat, I had a green Prabhupada hat. You see my head, and then I went behind the camera person. And then Bhavananda's there like, get in the back, don't you get in front of Prabhupada. So then I had to run around and then get in the back again, So, but it'd be like that. All of a sudden you get squished, and then it's like, what am I going to do, and then you get pushed and lifted up, and Prabhupada would go around, and then as you go around, and then he'd come back around, and he'd ring the bell, and the boys would go nuts. They start jumping up and down like crazy, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada put his hands up, and just the voices would go absolutely bonkers. You know what I mean? It was just very intense. It would just, and when people would see this, they'd just go, what's going on? It doesn't matter what country you're in. They all want to know, who is this personality? And that's why you'd see people coming up and then bowing down totally to, touch Prabhupada's feet sometimes, and he'd allow it. And that was the time when I got really close to Prabhupada. But then there was another time for initiation. You know what I mean? He's right here, and I'm right here. And then he goes, no, scoot over here, next to his knee, because he's going to say the mantra in my right ear for Gayatri. And then he's telling it to me, and I'm fumbling along, I couldn't read any of this. It's very hard for English-speaking people to actually you're going through Sanskrit. Hare Krishna mantra is hard enough in the beginning, and then, then you're reading Sanskrit, the Gayatri, and you're going, and then Prabhupada, because I was struggling, he goes, anyways, eventually you'll learn it, but it was like that. And then, then I bowed down. He said, any questions? I look into his eyes. I mean, right here, look into his eyes. I'm like right here in front of his face. And I just start crying. Because you look into his eyes, there's just all this, mystic power. And his eyes are just like deep. I mean, they were deep. And then you just, and that was it. And then I just bowed down and I got out, But it was very, 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 very intense like that. And then sometimes, and then when Prabhupada's plate would come out, all the devotees would go absolutely bonkers. It didn't matter where it was, whether it was India, whether it was, and Prabhupada would say that, he said in Indian culture, the Indians were very nice. You give them a little mahal, they'll take a little mahal and they'll respect it. But you Americans, you'll eat plateful after plateful after plateful, and it'd be like vultures when that plate would come out. The devotees, and especially mostly the Western, they'd come up and just start grabbing, and then some guests that would come would be like horrified, like, what are you doing? Do you know how to respect Mahaprasad? Yeah, we respect Mahaprasad. so it'd be intense like that, But yeah, that was the first time I remember seeing Prabhupada was in the airport. Because, in New York, he'd always come to New York. That was the second biggest center. LA was the first. That was the second one. Mayapur was just beginning, and so beginning also, Vrindavan wasn't even built yet, totally built yet. It was just barely starting, in 71, 72, 73, like that. So New York and LA were the biggest temples. So he always came to New York, because then he'd go down to New Vrindavan, and he'd go like that. And then, when I was in the roadshow, we had it where it was, we were performing, this rock music and glorification of Srila Prabhupada. We were dressed in tie-dye from head to toe, crazy outfits, with big lotus eyes like this painted on our faces. And I'm playing drums, and then Prabhupada comes in, Surya Mas, there's a lecture called Surya Mas. He comes in, all the lights are out, the spotlights on Srila Prabhupada. And I'm telling you, he looked like he was going like this down the staircase, and I'm going, and I go, are you catching that? And so Atindra, the other drummer next to me, he was going, yeah, I got that. And then I saw the other doors later on, and I talked to the, the flute player, and I said, did you catch that? Prabhupada looked like he's floating. He said, yeah, he looked like he was floating down the stairs, kind of like this. I said, yeah, exactly. Prabhupada had a lot of things like that where sometimes it was just mystic power. He would do something and you go, that was one of the things that, well, I can go on and on and on. But yeah, it's quarter of. Okay,
please, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Please go on.
Well, in Bombay, they had it where the one man that was causing I think it was Mr. Nair. Giri Raj will write all about it, and he'll talk all about it. And he had the little Durga temple across the way. I didn't know. I came there one time, and I went to go in there to have darshan. I didn't know. I was innocent. Hell, lady, chase me. And then I came back to the devotees, and I go, did I do anything wrong by going in there to have darshan? They go, oh, you don't know? I said, what? I said, that's the guy that we're fighting with. He's trying to get us kicked out of here. He doesn't want us. It's a war with him. I go, oh, I didn't know. No one told me. So what happened is that in the end, he died. He more or less burned up. And then, or set himself on fire. And then they were trying to say Srila Prabhupada did it through mystic power. That's how they were accusing Srila Prabhupada. Because he set himself on fire. Something like that. I don't remember the exact details. Gary Raj knows all the details. It was something where it was more or less, it was something really bad happened. And there was a lot of things there was a lot of different things that were quite amazing that would happen. Just one after another, like Prabhupada in Mayapur, I was there in 1975, Prabhupada went into ecstasy, and he just on the Vyasa sign just goes back and leans back. He said, ecstasy, and you could have heard a pin drop, and just everyone's watching, and then someone starts to say something, and it's just like the devotees wanted to pound something, because they wanted to see this, but waves of ecstasy were coming out of Prabhupada. You could feel it when the devotees were looking at each other, just oozing out. It was just like, it kind of reminded me of the Aurora Borealis type of thing. It was just, coming out like that. It was just intense. The devotees, you could feel it, very intense. And that happened twice, because then another time, so yeah, 76 probably went into ecstasy too, on the Vyasa sign. It was just, unbelievable how this, this would happen like this. And then he would be, like one time I had it in Hyderabad, we're at the Pandal, and there's so many things that slip by because the devotees don't always remember, because if he didn't write it down as soon as it happened, it was Shruti Kirti, and I even asked him about this, and he didn't even remember it. I couldn't believe it. I was right there. Here was the Pandal stage, Prabhupada facing the crowd that way. Then there was some stairs coming down, Prabhupada came down, there's a little opening in the side, you know, the Pandal canvas, and then he went back there and to pee. And so when he went back there, then all of a sudden, what's his name? His servant. I just said his name. Shriti Kirti. He was looking, he said, towards the audience, and then Srila Prabhupada fell back into his arms, and he went like, you know, and then Srila Prabhupada stood up, and then he was okay, and then he came back in, washed his hands, came back in, and then Shriti Kirti said, yeah, he just collapsed into my arms, you know. And then I asked Shriti Kirti later, he goes, I don't even remember that. And I was right there, I saw it, you know what I mean? I was right there when he came out and said it, you know. I went, you know, so sometimes things would happen, and later on, if they didn't write it down right away, the devotees, they'd forget. But there were so many things that were just, you know, hey, you can read them, a lot of biographies, and then as you read them, you start to remember things. Oh yeah, I remember that detail, oh, I remember that, and then things start to pop up. But then you got to write them down, because otherwise you forget. There's things like that. Okay, I'll read just one more. And then, because this is an intense one, and this is not on the Lilamrita. Okay, this is one where Srila Prabhupada, I'll say it and then see if I can find it here. Srila Prabhupada had it that he developed hydrocele. Hydrocele is a swelling of the genitals. And what happened is that they had it where Srila Prabhupada, this was in Jhansi. This is in Jhansi, and it was 1959. Trying to find it here. It was in 1959, and Acharya Prabhakar was there, and he said that Srila Prabhupada, here it is, in 1953, sorry, it was the year I was born, sorry, 1953. Prabhupada was put in, okay, here, let's see. Okay, in 1953, Prabhupada was put in the Civic Hospital, Jhansi. He would be unconscious for 24 hours. He would wake up for half a minute and say, Shri Krishna! And then he'd go back into unconscious. He was not taking any water or milk or anything. He was unconscious for 3 days. The doctor said he had hydrocele, a deadly disease. The second day he woke up again and said, Shri Krishna! And went unconscious again. The doctor said, if he doesn't take milk, I won't be held responsible. Then on the third day, Prabhupada woke up and said that you can give me cow's milk. That will cure me. And then Prabhupada said, but is it cow's milk? And then the doctor said, this is in a hospital. I cannot give you cow's milk. And then you might die. And then Prabhupada said, Shri Krishna, and he passed out again. The doctor finally gave him an injection of cow's milk into the stomach. And Prabhupada recovered. Yeah, so the thing is that, you know, there's a lot of things that would happen and just amazing. Acharya Prabhakar has passed on now. But that was Prabhupada's first disciple, was Acharya Prabhakar Mishra, you know. That was his first disciple in Jhansi. Yeah. So anyway, it's getting late. You know, and if you want to talk more in the future, we can talk more. But right now, we have a program that we should follow. Hare Krishna. Any more questions before we start? No long questions, just snippets.
That's the most stunning lecture I've ever heard, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Well, because it's about Prabhupada. Anything it's just like I'm a UPS man. So anything that comes, it's because of Srila Prabhupada, Guru Kripa, and Krishna Kripa. That's all it comes from. Otherwise, I'm just a UPS man, you know what I mean, and just try to distribute it, you know. So the thing is, thank you very much, but you know, I have a UPS outfit on, so, you know, so I'm just a deliverer. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.